Hey, Freddy with CJ Off-Road. If you've been following our YouTube channel, you've seen we've done a ton of upgrades to our 2008 Wrangler, but it still has the factory ride height, and that is just not okay. So today we're going to be giving it a 2.5-inch lift with this Pedders lift kit. I have Angel from Pedders. What can you tell me about this kit and the company?
Thanks for having me, by the way. Oh, the company itself is a company that's been around since 1950 in Australia. Very well known, a household name really, but new to the States. With that, our entry into the States about a year ago, we're very keen on exploring new markets, and the Jeep JK, the Wrangler, is a new market for us. So this is our initial offering for the vehicle. This is a heavy-duty 2.5-inch, let's say 2-inch average lift for the 4-door vehicles.
Awesome. Let's get to the installation. Tools you'll need for this installation: a lift and pole jacks or a jack and jack stands, 3/8 ratchet, 15mm socket, 16mm socket, 18mm socket, an extension, 1/2-inch ratchet, 21mm socket, 14mm wrench, 15mm wrench, 16mm wrench, 18mm wrench, and a trim panel removal tool. All right, we got the Jeep up in the air and took all the wheels off. What's the first thing we're going to do now?
We're going to start by removing this brake line bracket, so as to avoid pulling on that brake line, and then remove this sway bar end link as well as the one on the other side, so we can get the clearance we need as we drop the axle down.
Okay. Grab yourself an 18mm wrench and socket to remove the sway bar end link. We have it removed from the other side, so all we need to do is remove this side. And now we're going to remove the shock, starting with the upper mount. Now that we have the end link disconnected, we're going to support the axle with a pole jack before we remove anything else. We have the top portion of the shock disconnected, and now we can lower the axle.
Now that we've lowered the axle, we can remove the coil spring.
Here's a side-by-side comparison of our factory spring and the Pedders spring. As you can see, the Pedders spring is larger in diameter and in length, and that's what's going to give us our 2.5-inch lift.
Okay, next we can remove the lower shock and actually physically remove it from the vehicle.
We're now ready to install our new Pedders springs. I'm going to pull down on the axle just to give him more room to get it in.
All right, now upon reassembly, you're going to slip this into the upper mount, and once that's slipped past, you'll slide this bushing over the washer and then the new nut. Now, once you have the top mount secure, just go ahead and slip over this gaiter to protect from debris, water, etc.
The factory end links can now be reconnected. You'll probably have to support the axle for this or lift it up, and just reinstall the factory hardware. Tighten the factory nut and bolt.
All right, now we can reconnect the factory brake line bracket using the original hardware again.
We have this side all complete and buttoned up. Now we can repeat the process on the other side, then move on to the rear. Now we're going to support the rear axle before we remove anything. We're going to start by removing the two 16mm bolts that hold the top of the shock on.
Next, we can remove the lower mount for our shock. Maybe. Now next up, we'll remove this brake line bracket, so it'll allow us enough slack for the axle to drop down without hurting the brake line. And the same with this ABS wiring here. We're going to remove that just so we have enough slack to drop this down.
Now we're going to lower the axle to remove the springs. To give us more room to remove the spring and install the Pedders spring, we're going to disconnect the sway bar. Now we're going to lower the axle to give us some more room.
Now here we have our new Pedders spring and our factory spring pad. We're going to put that on there, paying attention to where the original spring sat and lining that mark up with the new spring.
We're ready to install our new Pedders spring. I'm going to pull down on the axle to give him a bit more room to get that in there. Just like that. Raise the axle back up and reinstall the factory sway bar end link.
All right, next we can put our rear shock back in place, starting with the upper mount. Recommended just thread one in so you can get one of the ears started on that, and then you can put the one next to it and hold it in place.
We have the shock secured up top. Now we need to lift the axle so we can put the bottom mount in. Tighten the nut and bolt. Reconnect the brake line bracket.
All right, the final step before we're ready to put the wheels back on and lower the vehicle is to plug this ABS line back in.
Once you get both sides complete and everything's back together, you can reinstall the vent tube and your installation's finished. Okay, now our Jeep finally has some proper ground clearance and it's looking a lot better. You know, this lift kit wasn't too bad to install, figure maybe 3 to 4 hours, and before you know it, you'll be heading off-road.